pod bay doors, please, Hal.
The pod bay doors are slightly open on this week's mini episode. Welcome once again. I'm Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com, also ArmchairOscars.com. And sitting here with me is Mr. Doug Heller, the critic, historian, and legend from TalkMovieMe.com. How the heck are you today, sir?
I'm all right, Jerry. How are you doing?
We're in the middle of, as you can see, if you're following our episodes, you can see that we're in the middle of Star Wars. And we were just sitting here talking about how sometimes you go to find a DVD in your collection and you open the case and hey, it's not there.
Yeah, I was saying I've had to break my son of that when he was little. We would have whatever we watched last in whatever we're watching now's box,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't be switched back, and so there'd be one empty case, and you would have to follow the trail of what was watched to find out where everything is.
Follow the clues. Clues. Yeah, I had this thing where I just really wanted to watch Star Wars, and I go to the shelf and
that's novel. That never happens.
There's this space on my shelf where my anthology series should be, and I asked my wife, and it's like she's let her niece borrow it. Her niece had never seen it. Well, fine, but I want to watch it now.
Honey, where's my super suit?
Where are my pants? And I always say, I want George Lucas to disappoint me in the order in which he intended.
Exactly, and I want to get to the end of Jedi and be angry at the Blu-ray.
I want to get up and leave the room.
Right, so that I don't have to watch Hayden Christensen appear next to Yoda and Sebastian Shaw.
People get mad about Greedo. That's what pisses me off. Is that ending of Jedi? That was not necessary.
Oh.
Really, I hated that.
Can you imagine, Alec Guinness, if he were still alive and he looked over? How did you do that with the Force? I want to go back to looking like Ewan McGregor.
Why can't I get a makeover?
Yeah. I had somebody in those movies too.
We talked a little bit about this in our first episode, those alterations. What really bothers me is that those original cuts are not available.
Right, and I think we talked about that. They were released on DVD in a 4:3 widescreen, so not enhanced for widescreen television. On these, like on the back sides of the special editions, individually, and they were available for a while, and then they
came
just
out in 2007.
vanished. Yeah.
And everybody wants those. And I don't really understand Disney's reluctance to release those. They own them.
They own them, but I think their goal, despite cutting him out, is to stay true to George Lucas's vision. And if those are the official versions, that's what he finished, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy wants to go in and change stuff, even though it would be a huge moneymaker.
It would.
And it wouldn't really be all that difficult to do. I'm sure the original cuts still exist.
Yeah. The only problem is there are so many cuts that were done over the course of 15, 20 years that it's impossible to get a cut that makes everybody happy.
Well, sure.
It's difficult because, but that's what bothers me, is that the original is not available. I know he wants to keep his vision, but I've always felt that George Lucas did lose track of keeping his fans happy.
Well, I think that he's more concerned with making himself happy with these movies.
Yeah.
He's happy that people like them,
Mm.
but to be perfectly honest, I mean, he's a multi-billionaire. He didn't need to consider the fans. He could just do whatever he wanted to.
But in the spirit of the fact that the fans are really the ones that kept it going, and the fact that they're the
And
ones that made it
continued to
successful.
go even while they
Right.
were bitching about it.
Right.
So
They were the ones.
he
They
made
were
his
the
money
ones.
anyway.
They were the ones who went to see episode one and said, "Rest assured, I will be online, registering my disappointment throughout the world after I see it 6 more times."
Hmm. And I'm not going to see episode 2. And then episode 2 comes out, and then they go see that 10 times. And they say,
10
this
times.
is worse than episode 1. And then I'm not going to see episode 3. And then episode 3 comes out, and they're the first ones in line. And
I'm not going to see Star Wars with mouse ears, and they go see Star Wars with mouse
you're
ears.
right. So, I mean, he doesn't need to consider the audience because the audience will be there
Mm-hmm.
regardless.
Yeah.
Like,
I was curious when he first started doing this. I was really curious because I wanted to know. It's like, what does the Star Wars movie look like now? Okay, he's going to change a few things. I was wowed by that trailer, the original trailer that came out. But I would say I liked some of the changes. I hate some of the changes. I'm generally about half and half with it. I can't. The problem is that my brain has now gotten so screwed into the the changes and the alterations is that I can't remember what it looked like before.
oh, I weirdly enough, I still remember, like, if I'm watching any of the original trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit there and go, that's a special edition shot. That scene wasn't in the original. I still know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I get why people want it, but there would be just as many people up in arms that have never seen those versions
Mm-hmm.
that would be upset if the special editions were, say, taken off the market in favor of the original cuts. Then, it would be getting all the worms into one can and then opening it from the other end.
Right.
You know,
Now, some people, and I completely understand this, particularly people that were my age, class of '77, who want Star Wars as it was the one they saw in the theater. No title, no New Hope, no Chapter 4. They want it to be as they remember it.
Star Wars and then the crawl. Well,
Yeah.
it hasn't been like that since what, 78?
Yeah.
79? Like
Since the re-release. Actually,
the
since
first
Rise of the Empire came out.
re-release. Yeah.
But-
So, I mean,
But
at this point, that's just that's quibbling so that you can guarantee you will never be happy.
right.
That's basically ensuring your misery.
Well,
I don't want
watched
any of these. Well,
There's a really, really interesting. I can't remember who did it. Forgive me. But there is a wonderful YouTube video where they go through every single cut and change that was made, and it's really interesting. They're not narrating it. They're just showing you what happened, and they're comparing this and that. Some cuts I didn't even know. I didn't even recognize. Some things I'm really confused about. There's a scene where R2 gets swallowed by that creature in the swamp.
that whole thing in Empire on Dagobah has always been upsetting to, like, just because it was unnecessary. Like they looped in a different line for Luke.
Yeah. Originally, he said, "You're lucky you don't taste very good," which is a good line.
It is a good line, and then now in the new one he says, "You're lucky to get out of there."
That's a very prequel line.
Yeah. And again, The
Sorry,
Godfather calls.
The Godfather calls. That's my ringtone because The
Um,
Godfather's my favorite movie.
but I've never understood that particular reloop, or if it wasn't a reloop, if it was a different take,
Hmm.
there's no reason for it.
Not at all.
You're lucky you don't taste very good is a very Luke answer.
Yeah, and like I said, "You're lucky to get out of there" was a very it's a very prequel line.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that stilted wooden dialogue. Um, there are some things like some stupid decisions. Like there's a famous shot where a stormtrooper bumps his head when he comes
Mm-hmm.
through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the alterations, they added a sound effect to illustrate it.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessary.
No.
You don't need that.
I think initially they did that and then they took it out. I don't think it's still there.
Really. Well, uh, there are some that and I will defend some of them. I like the replacement of the Emperor because it fits in Empire because it fits the continuity better.
It does. I hate the episode 3 rubber mask. I can't get past. Like he just looks awful.
Mm.
And when you see him what is in the timeline 6 months later, he looks completely different. Could they
Mm.
not have replicated his original makeup for that shot?
I think what would have worked better, and if I were doing the alterations, this is what I would have done. I would have taken out the Emperor and really just had his voice and let it be more of a suggestion of what he looks like than actually seeing him. You see part of the hologram, but you don't see all of his face.
Or do it like they did in episode 1 and 2 when they were still for some reason trying to make you not know who Darth Sidious was,
Hmm.
and have the hood pulled down
The
further
hood pull down, yeah,
so that you
yeah,
can just see his mouth, and then you wouldn't have the weird, oh, he looks like he did 24 years ago,
oh look, here's
but 6 months later he looks 24 years older and he's in his 80s now suddenly.
right.
And you know, it's it's congruent, it's congruently incongruent.
Mhm.
uh,
Very
and
confusing statement, but okay.
yeah, it bothers me because it's the same actor, and that's how it lines up congruently, but it's incongruent because he doesn't look the same.
Right.
And it just that part has always,
You do need the scene
you need the
um,
scene. I
because
just
it shows. We've watched him dispatch how many different officers, and then all of a sudden you see he has someone to bow to. Because that's really the only scene that is the only scene in Empire where we see him.
Mhm.
But then you see that Vader has someone to bow to, and you sort of it's an inside look of how the Sith works.
so everybody has a boss.
Everybody has a boss, but it's oh, you could go back all day long and debate this stuff. Some of it works. I like some of the stuff in Jedi. I love the Bantha herd. I love that stuff.
Yeah, and I like the refashioned Death Star fight in A New
Yeah,
Hope. Um,
I'm glad they replaced Yoda in
yes,
Episode 1 because that looked terrible.
it did. That puppet was awful.
Um, but the end of Jedi, John Williams came up with such a um, beautiful orchestral score to bring this series to bring this trilogy to a close in the special edition.
Right, yeah, the new music is really quite good.
It is really good, but then you've got that damn Hayden Christensen, and I do not argue that they should have made a younger ObiWan. I argued that they just should have left it alone.
Yeah, there was no reason to change it.
Yeah.
The I guess there's the method to his madness is so that when kids are watching it, they realize that the the guy that they knew from the prequel trilogy was the same guy that was in the Darth Vader suit, and now he's
Yeah.
okay and he's back to normal.
Yeah.
But kids also kind of understand aging,
Hmm.
and like they know that like Alec Guinness is different than Ewan McGregor, and they'll still put together that that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
And they also know that Anakin got older because they just saw him 5 minutes ago.
right, exactly. They didn't replace him with Hayden Christensen there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So
Yes,
I mean,
thank you, George Lucas.
yeah. So what was the point of? I don't know. I not every decision he makes is great, but what he has given us is still worth the pain of.
Yeah, absolutely. He created me a love of films that I can never, created me a love of films that I'll never, I can never say thank you enough for what he gave us. And it's wonderful. I love the direction of, um, you can't blame Star Wars for what it did to the American cinema, but you can only um, talk about its impact
Mm-hmm.
and what it was and its impact on the culture. It anticipated um, high tech, video games and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
things that were on the way, and this social thing that movies became, this massive social thing movies became. Um, Not only through the movies, but through the merchandising.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can talk about its negatives, but it has a lot of positives too.
Yep.
We probably wouldn't have most of the stuff that we have now if it hadn't been for Star Wars.
Very true.
So,
For better or for worse.
for better or for worse, and we are, and that's why we spent the month of May talking about the Star Wars movies because they mean that much to us.
Mm-hmm.
They're like family.
Yes.
They disappoint us as much as they give us joy.
A more accurate phrasing of family I'll never hear.
Yeah.
Uh, I, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about those.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you had on your mind that you
Not
wanted?
really.
No.
It's just Star Wars was on my mind today. So Spike TV was showing Jedi the other night. And I was
Spike
just,
doesn't exist anymore, Jerry.
or
It's
what is it?
really it's long gone, kiddo.
What is it?
It's like FX or so. It's
I can't. I don't keep up with basic cable. Whatever channel was showing it, whatever it was. It was the last. It was the last version that George Lucas put out, and it had Hayden Christensen in it, and it pissed me off. So I had to talk about it. Well, that's all I got.
You can find. We thank you for listening. You can find us in iTunes under the Pod Bay Doors podcast with Doug and Jerry. Subscribe to us there. You can find us on YouTube. You can find all of our back episodes at the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can find us on Twitter at pod_bay and on Patreon at pod_bay. Throw a tip into our virtual tip jar. Help us out. We thank you very much for tuning in, and the Pod Bay doors are now all the way closed.
The mission has been completed.